Hello dear friends, today I'm going to read you The Tale of the Shoe. It is a story from Emma Donoghue's Kissing the Beach. And I would recommend this book for teenagers, because from here you can get the alternative point of view on a classical Cinderella story. Let's go. The Tale of the Shoe. Till she came it was all cold. Ever since my mother died, the feather bed felt hard as a stone floor. Every word that came out of my mouth limped away like a toad. Whatever I put on my back now turned to sackcloth and chafed my skin. I heard a knocking in my skull and kept running to the door, but there was never anyone there. The days passed like dust, brushed from my fingers. I scrubbed and swept because there was nothing else to do. I raked out the hearth with my fingernails and scoured the floor until my knees bled. I counted grains of rice and divided brown beans from black. Nobody made me do the things I did. Nobody scolded me. Nobody punished me. But me. The shrill voices were all inside. Do this, do that, you lazy heap of dirt. They knew every question and answer, the voices in my head. Some days they asked why I was still alive. I listened out for my mother, but I couldn't hear her among their clamor. When everything that could possibly be done was done for the day, the voices faded. I knelt on the hearth and looked into the scarlet cinders until my eyes swam. I was trying to picture future, I suppose. Some nights I told myself stories to make myself weep, then stroked my own hair till I slept. Once, out of all the times when I ran to the door and there was nobody there, there was still nobody there. But the stranger was behind me. I thought for a moment she must have come out of the fire. Her eyes had flames in their centers, and her eyebrows were silvered with ash. The stranger said, "My back must be tired, and the sweeping could wait." She took me into the garden and showed me a hazel tree I had never seen before. I began to ask questions, but she put her tiny finger over my mouth so we could hear a dove murmuring on the highest branch. It turned out that she had known my mother when my mother was alive. She said that was my mother's tree. How can I begin to describe the transformations? My old dusty self was spun new. This woman sheeted my limbs in blue velvet. I was dancing on points of clear glass. And then, because I asked, she took me to the ball. Isn't that what girls are meant to ask for? Her carriage brought me as far as the palace steps. I knew just how I was meant to behave. I smiled ever so prettily when the great doors swung wide to announce me. I refused a canopy and kept my belly pulled in. Under the 1,000 crystal candelabras, I danced with 10 elderly gentlemen who had nothing to say but did not let that stop them. I answered only "indeed" and "oh yeah" and "do you think so?" At 10 to 12 I came down the steps and she swept me away. "Had enough?" she asked, lifting a hair of my long glove. But she was old enough to be my mother and I was a girl with a fortune to make. The voices were beginning to jabber. They each told me to do something different. "Take me back tomorrow night," I said. So she appeared again just when the soup was boiling over and took a silver spoon from her pocket to feed me. Our fingers drew pictures in the ashes on the hearth, vague shapes of birds and islands. She showed me the sparkle in my eyes, how wide my skirt could spread, how to waltz without getting dizzy. I was lithe in green satin now. My own mother would not have recognized me. That night at the ball I got right into the swing of things. I tittered at the old king's jokes. I accepted a single chicken wing and nibbled it daintily. I danced 3 times with the prince. whose hand wavered in the small of my back. He asked me my favorite color, but I couldn't think of any. He asked me my name, and for a moment I couldn't remember it. At 5 to midnight, my feet were starting to ache. I waited on the bottom step and she came for me. On the way home, I leaned my head on her narrow shoulder and she put one hand over my ear. "Had enough?" she asked. But I didn't have to listen to the barking voices to know how the story went. My future was about to happen. "Take me back tomorrow night," I said. So she came for me again just when the small sounds of mice were getting on my nerves, and she told me they were coachmen to drive us instead. She claimed her little finger was a magic wand. It could do spectacular things. She could always make me laugh. That night, my new skin was red silk, shivering in the breeze. The prince hovered at my elbow like an autumn leaf ready to fall. The musicians played the same tune over and over. I danced like a clockwork ballerina and smiled till my face twisted. I swallowed a little of everything I was offered, then leaned over the balcony and threw it up again. I had barely time to wipe my mouth before the prince came to propose. Out on the steps he led me, under the half-full moon, all very fairy tale. His long moustaches were beginning to tremble. He seemed like an actor on a creaking stage. As soon as the words began to leak out of his mouth, they formed a cloud in which I could see the future. I could hardly hear him. The voices were shrinking, "Yes, yes, yes, say yes, until you lose your chance, you bag of nothingness." I opened my teeth, but no sound came out. There was no harm in this man. What he proposed was white and soft, comfortable as fog. There was nothing to be afraid of, but just then the midnight bell began to toll out the long procession of years, the palatial days by moonless night. And I leaped backwards down the steps, leaving one shoe behind. The bushes tore my dress into the old rags. It was perfectly silent on the lawn. She was waiting for me in the shadows. She didn't ask, had I had enough. I had got the story all wrong. How could I have not noticed that she was beautiful? I must have dropped all my words in the bushes. I reached out. I could hear surprise on her breath. "What about the shoe?" she asked. "It was digging into my heel," I told her. "What about the prince?" she asked. "He'll find someone to feed if he looks long enough." "What about me?" she asked very low. "I'm old enough to be your mother." Her finger was spelling on the back of my neck. "You're not my mother," I said. "I'm old enough to know that." I threw the other shoe into the brambles where it hung glinting. So then she took me home, or I took her home, or we both were somehow taken to the closest thing. In the morning I asked, "Who were you before you walked into my kitchen?" And she said, "Will I tell you my own story? It is a tale of a bird." So next time I'm going to read you the tale of the bird. Good night, dear friends.